I'm going to discuss loading straight wall casings. Now, what the cartridge happens to be is not what this video is about. Now, I do happen to be loading 41 Magnum, but the video is not about 41 Mag. It's about straight wall casings and the procedure that I would go through to figure out what I'm going to load, how I'm going to go throughout the process, getting set up, you know, the whole thing. So let's begin with this. I have decided that I am going to load 41 Magnum. I've got 100 casings that are here that are in fact once fired casings that I cleaned in a vibratory tumbler. Now they weren't particularly dirty, so I've got corn cob with a little bit of polish in there. I throw them in there for about an hour or so, right? And they come out looking pretty good. Now, if I ran it longer and added maybe a little bit more polish, I could make them shinier. How shiny they are is not an important thing to me. To you, maybe you want your stuff looking like jewelry. Great. Run it for a few hours. Run it all night if you want. It'll look like jewelry. The point with cleaning your casings is they need to be clean, because if you've got crud on the casing, you don't want that going into your sizing die, and you don't want crud going back into the chamber of your gun. So I have decided, after I got out 141 mag casings out of the vibratory tumbler, made sure that I got all the corn cob out of there. Now these are going to need to go through the entire process. They're clean, they're ready to begin. But what is it that I am going to load in 41 mag? As I'm looking around, I got it down to two different bullets. One of them, Acme. Now this is a high-tech coated projectile, and this would be real good for target shooting. The high-tech coat or a powder coat, you can load those like you would a plated bullet. That stuff does not burn off going down your barrel, and it's really good stuff. It's got its own natural lubricity to it. So something like that in a 215 grain semi-wad cutter, in my mind, this is a great target shooting bullet. Now I could load it down a little bit if I'm doing relatively short range work or I'm shooting steel targets, and hopefully I'm setting those things up properly so I'm not going to have anything ricocheting back towards me. Or if on the other hand I wanted to do like silhouette, I've got a chicken or a ram or something like that set out at 100, 200 yards, and I'm trying to hit that, that would be a good bullet. You wanted a little bit of extra mass for that type of application. On the other hand, I also happen to have a box that's been, well, it's been hanging around for a while. Sierra 170 grain jacketed hollow cores. Now, a jacketed hollow core from Sierra is basically, it's a hollow point. They call it a hollow core. If you look at that, right, well, it's a hollow point. They've got exposed lead there on the top, and this, as they call it, their Sportsmaster. You could hunt with it if you wanted to, or it'd be good on thin-skinned game. So I'm thinking about, what is the application? What is it that I'm going to do with this ammunition? Why am I making the ammunition? Do I want to do target shooting? Is it going to be for personal defense? Am I going to go hunting with something? See, there's very different tools that you would use for the job depending upon what the job happens to be. So the first order of business is to think about what it is you want to do with the gun. What are you going to do with the ammunition? And then that's one of the beauties of hand loading, is you can completely tailor everything you're doing to that application. So my thought, as I'm going through this process with you, was why don't I go ahead and use the 170 grain Sierra jacketed hollow cores, because I'm thinking I've got a 4-inch model 57 that's going to be on my hip when I'm out in the high desert. And in case I run into trouble, 170 grain bullet leaving the muzzle north, anything north of basically 1250 out of the muzzle, and this will be substantially faster than that, will take care of most problems you might encounter. Now, this is not a hunting load per se. If I were going hog hunting, I'm going to use a 41 mag. I would use a longer barrel gun, and I would probably use a much heavier bullet, and I would push it as fast as I possibly can. But I want to keep the weight down on something. If you're out in the desert and you're doing a bunch of stuff out there, just in case you encounter trouble, if it's far off, I don't need to make a long shot, right? If it's far away, I'm going to avoid trouble. I'm going the other. I don't want problems. If I see trouble out there, I'm going the other direction just to avoid it. But if I encounter something kind of unexpected and it's up on me and I need to make a decision, and if I'm reaching for that gun, I may need to use it and do very quick work with it. So I don't want something that's going to rock real hard. I want to be able to fire that thing double action. I want to be able to keep that gun level and place my shots exactly where they need to go and do it in a very deliberate manner. So I don't want a heavy bullet that's rocking my hand real hard because I'm pushing it as fast as I possibly can. With this projectile, because it's a hollow core with basically an exposed lead tip, it's going to mushroom really pretty rapidly. So I can keep my muzzle velocity down a little bit, and I can pick a powder that's going to give me a little bit higher velocity at a little bit lower pressure than, and I'm going to get into that with you in just a minute, because it allows me to keep the gun level. It just makes life a little bit easier. So that's what's going through my mind as I decide what bullet, what powder, and all that. So because this is a Sierra 170 grain jacketed hollow core, my first choice is to pull my data from the Sierra manual. It is, in my view, best if you can pull your data from the manufacturer of the projectile first. Now, if for some reason you're not going to go that direction, and there could be a lot of reasons, and I'm not going to spend an hour going over all of them, but the point is, if you pull your data from somewhere else, and that's exactly what I'm going to do in this instance, because I've decided after reviewing what are the powders that I've got on hand, what do I want to use to load this with. Now, I know just from experience and loading a lot of 41 mag, if I was going to do target shooting at relatively short distance on steel targets, you know, that type of thing, unique works really well. I can reduce the load, I can keep the velocity low, and it's just going to be very suitable. Now, if I wanted full house loads, if I'm going hog hunting, and let's say I was going to use, I don't know, a 230 grain hard cast bullet, a wide flat nose gas check projectile, and on hog I want to deposit as much energy as I can, I'm going to go with some powder that's going to give me the highest velocity out of the muzzle that I can reasonably handle, because I'm stalking, maybe I see the thing, I'm lining up my shot, I take the shot, I'm depositing as much energy as I can with a wide flat nose projectile or a Barnes, whatever the projectile is I'm going to use, but I'm going to the heavy end for that application. With this application, I'm going to reduce my velocity a little bit. It's still going to be a magnum load, but the lower pressure, which equals lower velocity, also equals less smack into your hand, and it's easier to keep the gun level to make rapid follow-up shots. And that's what's going through my mind as I'm doing this. So I look in the powder cabinet, and I've got about 6 pounds of long shot that I need to start using up. Now, long shot is listed in the Sierra manual, and it's also listed in the Lee manual. It's listed in a couple of others. And I've got, man, on my resource bench over here, I probably got 28, 30, 32 different printed resource publications, and I start comparing data in a whole bunch of different ones. Now, there are, if you wanted to load 41 Magnum, and again, this is not about 41 mag, it's about the process here. If you wanted to, you start comparing data and you make a list of all the things that you could load. Brother, I can tell you that there are north of 30 different powders that I could use, but because I happen to have a bunch of long shot and I want to start using it up, there with the 170 grain jacketed bullet in the Lee manual, I've got data right there for long shot. Now, their starting powder charge is a little bit lower than the Sierra manual. In fact, the higher powder charge, they're showing, one shows is a little bit lower velocity. A smaller powder charge in this one gives you a little bit higher muzzle velocity. Okay, that doesn't seem to make any sense. Well, we don't know exactly what the projectile they used for developing their data or where they pulled it from the Lee manual, because different bullets do make a difference. Now, unless they flat out tell us we use this particular projectile, it's, in my view, probably better if you're doing load development just to start with the more conservative powder charge, the lower powder charge, and then you can kind of work your way up from there. Now, I just know from having done this in the past that a relatively lower powder charge using long shot and 170 grain bullet is still going to shoot just fine out of that gun. You know, and if I'm in a hurry and I need to do quick work with it, if it goes here instead of there, I don't care if the group opened up 1 inch. The point is, I was able to use the tool that I had in my hand as effectively as I needed to for the purpose at hand. So that's what's going on in my head through that. So I've got myself basically set up. I've got 100 casings that are clean. They're going to be resized, decapped, flared, and then I'm going to seat the bullet. Now, the die set that I pulled for this is an RCBS carbide set that comes with 2 cedar plugs. There's more round in one and flatter in the other. And camera may not pick that up real well, but basically what we have going on here is if you've got a projectile that's sort of flat on top versus rounder on top. Now, just because something's flat on top does not necessarily mean that that seating plug is always the best one for the job. The way I do this is I open up the box of bullets and I grab one and I set this on top and I just start, you know, what's going to give me kind of a reasonable fit, because I'm thinking about what's going to take place here. It makes contact with the plug and then it's going to be pushing it into the casing. Now, it's going to wiggle some. I want to pick the one that's going to, in my thought process, give me the better concentricity. What's going to help it push into the casing straighter? I want it going in straight up and down, not at any kind of an angle. So I've got 2 seating plugs, one more round, one more flat, and the one that's flat in this instance does seem to be what I think is going to be a little bit better way to go to help me get the concentricity that I'm looking for. So I am going to use the flat top cedar plug in the seating die. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to set it back in the box just to remind me that's the one I chose. The other stem goes right there so I don't lose it. I've got my dies. I've decided on long shot. I've got some powder. I happen to have some CCI large pistol magnum primers. I've got 100 of those sitting in the drawer here. Got my primer flip tray. I've got my calipers. I've got a powder dispenser here, and I'm thinking the Hollywood Gun Shop Precision micrometer is the way to go as opposed to an electronic. I'm only making 100 of them, so it's not like I'm in a hurry or anything. I've got a deburring tool. I have everything I need all set up, ready to go. This is a basic process that I go through before I begin really doing anything. I'm getting myself set up. I have everything on hand, and I'm going to write down the information on my notepad. So there's my reminder, and I keep that right here at the bench. So this video, we're going to stop right here with setup, getting yourself organized. This is the process of deciding how and what I am going to in fact load. Next, maybe I'll do a video tomorrow morning. We'll talk about the actual setting up the dies, setting up your powder dispenser, and we'll just, if it takes 2 or 3 or 4 or 100 videos, whatever, we're going to walk through the entire process so you understand start to finish what to do and how to do it. Happy trails.